Welcome to my podcast. I'm the Laughing Philosopher. Life is complicated. You are complicated. Everything seems to have been figured out, except how to live a happy life, guided by wisdom and reason. What does it mean to be a good person? What is love? Who am I before I was told who I am? Why haven't I found myself yet? Why do I have regrets? Is this a just world? Almost from the moment of birth, we've been told how to behave, how to fit in, and how to fulfill other people's expectations. We grow to fear that we will lack importance or cease to exist in the lives of others if we think for ourselves and question the rules and roles that we've been told define us. Only when wisdom and reason removes this illusion can we live authentically in the world around us and become our real selves. Episode number 39. Did God write a book? God is too intelligent, too perfect, and too powerful to have written the Bible. I don't know who wrote it, but I am certain that the Bible wasn't written by a God. God wouldn't write a book. God wouldn't write a book because if God wrote a book, then he couldn't be God. Let us reason together. In this world, there is a supernatural book. It's worshipped as sacred because it is believed to be inspired or otherwise authored by God Himself. To billions of people, the Holy Bible is the chief cornerstone of their belief and faith in God. The Bible claims to reveal the mind of a supreme being. It claims to be God's word on two important subjects: how He expects His followers to live with one another, and how we ought to relate to and engage with God Himself. Claims, of course, are not proof. But for the next few minutes, let's assume that the Bible is the truth and nothing but the truth. Let's assume that concerning God, the Bible is right about everything. Let's begin at the beginning. What does the Bible mean by God? What's it like to be God? The Bible describes God as an uncreated being made up of uncreated matter. God is omniscient or all-knowing, omnipotent or all-powerful, and omnibenevolent or all good. God wouldn't be very godlike to you and me if God wasn't all-knowing, all-powerful, and all good. This just is the nature of God, just as we wouldn't consider something to be a triangle if it didn't have three sides. God wouldn't be God if He wasn't omniscient, omnipotent, and omnibenevolent. A triangle must have three sides to be a triangle. To be a God, God must be godlike. So God, all-knowing, all-powerful, and all good, wrote the Bible. Of all the different ways that God could have chosen in order to communicate with humanity, His most intelligent and beloved creation, this is how He chose to open His mind and reveal His thoughts to us. God wrote a book. And the book God authored has created more controversy, more disagreement, more division, and more hostility between human beings than any other words ever written down. Conflict, suffering, misery, and death have been the Bible's enduring legacy. Throughout history, there have been thousands of religious groups, sects, denominations, and cults founded on contrary, incompatible, opposing, and conflicting interpretations of the Bible. Every one of these religious groups believes itself to possess the one and only good, right, true, and correct interpretation of the Bible's text. Every one of these groups believes that all other interpretations of the Bible are not just different, but incorrect, false, wrong, and evil. So what's the problem? The problem is language. Language is inherently ambiguous. Words are ambiguous. Even the word ambiguous is ambiguous. Does the word high refer to elevation, drug use, or powerfulness? It depends. Consider the ordinary, everyday words, "I love you." What does it really mean for one person to say to another, "I love you"? It depends. If it's addressed to one's wife, then it has one meaning. But if it is directed to one's sister, then it means something altogether different. Hollywood could not exist without this ambiguity. Love your enemies, said Jesus. What does he really mean? It depends. Honor your father and mother. What does the fifth commandment really mean? It depends. Why didn't God choose a more effective way to communicate with His creation? Why didn't God choose a better way that doesn't permit ambiguity? A way to express Himself with indisputable clarity. Why didn't God choose another way that allows no room for doubt, confusion, or uncertainty about what He really means? But instead, God chose to write a book that has been interpreted and misinterpreted in thousands of opposing and incompatible ways that have contributed needlessly to countless disagreements and conflicts. I'm confused. Isn't God all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-good? If God didn't understand or foresee that His book would be incorrectly interpreted over centuries by billions of His sinful followers, then God is not all-knowing. If God couldn't think of a better, more effective way to communicate with His precious creation than to write a book that is so easily misinterpreted, then God is not all-powerful. If God anticipated and expected that his book would be interpreted and misinterpreted in many different and conflicting ways, and God just didn't care that this would lead to conflict, suffering, misery, and death, then God is not all good. God is, by our definition, all-knowing and all-powerful and all-good. If not, then God, as we understand and explain him, does not exist. If it doesn't have three sides, then it's not a triangle. If God wrote the Bible, then God is not God. So what does the Bible really mean? Everyone can't be right, but everyone can be wrong. Maybe God exists, but was not involved in writing the Bible. Maybe the Bible was written by ordinary men and no women. If God wrote the Bible, then why is it that nowhere in the Bible does it state that the Bible is the only book we ought to read or the most important book ever written? Nowhere in the Bible does it state that the Bible is a book of instructions for how to live. If Jesus is God and wrote the Bible, then why is it that nowhere in the Bible does Jesus himself call himself God? Nowhere in the Bible does Jesus even consider himself God. Nowhere in the Bible do Jesus' disciples express the idea or their belief that Jesus is God. If ancient men wrote the Bible, not God, then this would explain why nowhere in the Bible does it state that ancient documents written by ancient males from ancient cultures should be used to govern our contemporary way of life. Maybe, just maybe, God didn't write the Bible. And if God did not write the Bible, then God is God and may actually exist. According to the Bible, germs do not cause disease. Disease is caused by evil spirits and demons. The earth is not one of a great many planets. This planet is the center of the universe. Slavery is not the worst form of human bondage. It is natural for the strong to enslave the weak, and slaves ought to accept their fate and serve their slave masters. If God wrote a book in order to provide us with helpful information on how best to live, then why is there not one word or hint of scientific knowledge? There are only the ancient myths and ancient superstitions of ancient people. At least God could have warned us not to eat too much fried food. Not one page of the Bible, not even one sentence, could not have been written by an ancient male with ancient beliefs, living in an ancient culture in an ancient society. Not one page of the Bible, not even one sentence, could only have been written by a supreme being and creator of the universe. The Bible just doesn't make sense. Why would God create beings that are good and faithful to Him, knowing that they would suffer old age disease, and death? Why would God create good people knowing that bad things will happen to them? Why not just create good people? Skip the earthly suffering and use them to populate heaven. Why would God create beings that will reject Him, knowing that their fate is an eternity of pain and suffering? Why would God create bad people, knowing that good things will happen to them? This doesn't make sense. Why not just create evil people, omit the earthly mischief and misery they will cause, and use them to populate hell? If God is God, if God is all good, all knowing, and all powerful, then God has made some crazy and irrational choices, according to the book we are told that He wrote. Not what you and I would choose to do. And we are not divine beings, just ordinary, decent human beings. Bottom line, if God exists, then I'm pretty sure that He did not write the Bible. If God wrote the Bible, then I'm just as certain that God, as we imagine and conceive Him to be, cannot possibly exist. Did God write the Bible, or does God exist? Think for yourself. Hi, I'm Dr. Robert Corey, the Laughing Philosopher. Thanks for listening to my podcast. I've devoted my professional life to the intersection of sociology and philosophy, where the contemporary problems of life meet the ideas and convictions of the greatest human minds. Join me by subscribing to the Laughing Philosopher as we use reason and wisdom to explore big answers to the most important of all big questions: how to live.